My team constantly harassed me about my weight. After HR sided with them, I emailed the director detailing everything. They were called into disciplinary meetings and given formal warnings. I'm writing this down, and it feels a bit strange to be putting it into words. I, 24F, work for a helpline. I've been here for 5 years now. It's not a huge place, it's quite specialized, so on any given day, there are maybe 12 to 15 of us taking calls or handling web chats and emails, plus about 6 people in the back offices, the HR manager, her assistant, someone in admin, and the payroll team. Because of how the shifts are scheduled, we always take our breaks with the same small group, our designated team. My team includes me, Chloe, 23F, Brenda, 35F, and Diane, 45F. Chloe and Diane carry some extra weight, and Brenda is larger. Diane has been with the company since it started, practically, and she's very close friends with Ms. Evans, the HR manager. Everyone knows they socialize outside of work. Kevin is also technically on our team, but he works slightly different hours and often takes breaks separately, or just keeps to himself with headphones on. About 6 months ago, I decided to start bringing my own lunch from home. It was mainly to save a bit of money instead of always getting takeout from the burger joint next door and bringing it back to the canteen. That's when things started to change with my team. Since I stopped joining them for the daily takeout run, they began what feels like a campaign focused on my weight and what I eat. It started with comments about my lunch. I usually bring things like pasta with chicken or fish with rice and vegetables, sometimes lentil soup or a big salad. The first time, Diane peered into my container and asked what on earth that was, wrinkling her nose. Soon it was happening every day. They'd make remarks about my food looking bland or disgusting. Chloe would sometimes giggle and ask if I was on another health kick. Brenda often said things like she didn't understand why I ate that rabbit food stuff and that she'd rather be overweight than starve herself. They also started saying I must think I was better than them, or that I was deliberately trying to make them feel bad about their choices. This was confusing because I never ever mentioned their weight or what they ate. I'd just say I liked the food I brought or that it wasn't a diet, just my lunch. Even after seeing me eat a decent portion, the comments about starving myself or nibbling like a rabbit continued. Sometimes they'd offer me chips or a piece of chocolate from their lunches, and if I declined, Diane might sigh and say something about how I didn't have to worry. They'd also make comments about how lucky skinny people are because they can supposedly eat anything they want without gaining weight. This happened nearly every single day during our shared break time. If I asked them directly to stop, they usually would for that moment, maybe roll their eyes or exchange looks, but the comments would start right back up the next day. I tried ignoring it for a while. After a few weeks of the food comments, they shifted focus to my body shape. Brenda made a comment one day about my arms looking like twigs when I reached for something. Then Diane chimed in, saying I shouldn't lose any more weight or I'd disappear. They told me, sometimes laughing, that I wouldn't find a boyfriend until I put some weight on. They started talking about celebrities who have a slimmer build, similar to mine, discussing how unattractive or boyish they thought those women looked, often while glancing over at me. The thing is, I've actually gained a bit of weight since I started preparing my own lunches and exercising a bit more consistently. I wear a UK size 8. I have visible muscle tone from swimming, and I don't look underweight. I would tell them directly not to make comments about my body, stating that I found it inappropriate and hurtful. They would stop in the moment, often accompanied by tutting, more eye-rolling or mumbling under their breath about me being overly dramatic or sensitive. Brenda once said quite loudly to Diane, as I walked away after asking them to stop, that some people couldn't take a compliment, but the behavior would always resume, maybe the next day or the day after. Kevin was sometimes in the canteen during these exchanges, usually reading on his phone, and never joined in, but also never said anything. This pattern continued for months. Them making comments, me asking them to stop, them stopping temporarily with annoyance, then starting again. One lunchtime, maybe a month ago, I was particularly fed up after a comment Diane made about my lunch looking like birdseed. I told them, keeping my voice level, that they wouldn't appreciate it if I made similar personal comments about their bodies or food choices. Diane immediately retorted that being told you're skinny is a compliment, not an insult, and that you can't be bullied for being thin. Brenda added that they were just showing concern. I repeated that I found their comments upsetting, and I did not want them discussing my food, my eating habits, or my body anymore. I added that if it continued, I would have to take things further. It felt like an empty statement at the time because I wasn't sure what further meant. After that exchange, I started taking my lunch break outside, sitting on a bench down the street just to avoid them. Even so, they'd still make comments during work hours. Our job involves handling web chats and emails, so there are often periods of downtime where we sit at our desks near each other, and chatting is common. During these times, the comments would continue, maybe quieter, but still there. Brenda might loudly ask Chloe if she saw a picture online of a very thin model, saying how unhealthy she looked. Diane might ask me if I was feeling all right because I looked a bit peaky. It felt like things were escalating. 2 days ago, I was chatting with Lisa, a woman from a different team, during a quiet moment on the floor. I mentioned having pizza the night before. I overheard Brenda, who sits at the desk behind me, whisper loudly enough for me and Lisa to hear, joking to Diane that I probably just brought it all back up afterward. Lisa looked away quickly and changed the subject. The breaking point was today. There's construction work happening across the street from our building, making it noisy and dusty outside. Because of that, I decided to eat my packed lunch in the canteen again instead of going out. As I sat down, Diane, Brenda, and Chloe came over. They pulled chairs around my small table. Diane started by saying they needed to talk to me, that they were worried. They then proceeded to stage what they called an intervention regarding my supposed eating disorder. They said they thought I needed professional help and that my eating habits weren't normal. This, despite seeing me eat regularly for 5 years and my physique clearly not being underweight. It felt very pointed and deliberate. I couldn't stay calm anymore. I stood up, my chair scraped loudly, and I raised my voice, telling them they were out of line, that their behavior was unacceptable harassment, and listed some of the things they'd been saying for months. My team leader, Sarah, happened to be in the canteen getting coffee. She heard the commotion and immediately came over, guiding me out into the corridor. She let me vent for a minute. She was supportive, said she had noticed my colleagues being unpleasant towards me recently, but told me that because it involved accusations and potential policy breaches, there wasn't anything she could do directly as a team leader. She said it was an HR issue and advised me to report it to Ms. Evans. So, I went straight to HR. I walked into Ms. Evans' office. As I mentioned, Diane and Ms. Evans are close friends. I explained everything that had been happening over the past 6 months. The daily comments about my food, the insults about my body, the gossip, the incident I overheard 2 days ago, and the intervention that had just occurred in the canteen. Ms. Evans listened, but her expression seemed dismissive. She tapped her pen on her desk. When I finished, she told me I was taking things too personally and wasting her time with trivial matters. She stated that skinny shaming wasn't a recognized form of bullying, and that the women were probably just trying to be friendly or pay me compliments, even if awkwardly. She suggested I was lucky to have such problems. I asked explicitly if I could file a formal written complaint about harassment. She refused. She said it didn't meet the threshold for a formal complaint, and that I should try to resolve personality clashes informally. I can't recall the exact company policy for complaints off the top of my head. I plan to check the employee handbook tomorrow, but I think there's a process involving verbal and written stages before escalating beyond HR. It felt like she was blocking me from even starting that process. I left her office without saying anything else and just walked out of the building for the day, using some of my accrued leave time. I don't know what to do next. I've spoken directly to my coworkers multiple times. I've spoken to HR. Both avenues have led nowhere, with the problem being dismissed or denied. I've previously asked Sarah if I could swap break times to be with a different team, but was told it wasn't possible due to the strict scheduling needed for helpline coverage. I'm going to ask Sarah tomorrow if switching teams entirely might be an option, though I suspect it's unlikely given our specialized roles. I've started looking for other jobs, but I live in an area where unemployment is quite high, and finding something comparable, especially something I can move to quickly, will be difficult. I don't want to quit without having another position lined up. Am I overreacting to all of this? Part of me feels ridiculous for letting it get to this point. Update 1. First off, I wanted to acknowledge the responses and suggestions I received after sharing my situation. It was helpful to hear different perspectives. A few people suggested recording my coworkers. Unfortunately, due to the sensitive nature of our helpline work and data protection laws, we are strictly forbidden from having our mobile phones on the main work floor. We have to keep them in lockers located downstairs. Usually, when I went outside for lunch, I'd grab my phone on the way out, maybe check it quickly while having a cigarette, and then put it back in the locker before returning to the floor. Now I've decided I will start bringing my phone with me into the canteen during breaks just in case. It feels a bit tactical, but necessary. So, following some advice, the first thing I did was sit down and create a log of incidents. I spent Tuesday evening writing down everything I could remember, going back over the last 6 months. I used old text messages with friends where I might have mentioned a bad day, looked at my meal planning notes to pinpoint dates, and focused on recalling specific phrases used and who said them. I managed to document quite a few specific instances with approximate dates. For example, approx mid-October, brought in leftover shepherd's pie. Diane asked if I was trying to bulk up. Chloe laughed. Brenda said it was good to see me eat real food for a change. Told them it was just leftovers. Felt them watching me eat. I filled several pages in a small notebook. Tuesday morning, before my shift started, I was outside having my usual morning cigarette, and Sarah, my team leader, joined me. She asked if I was doing okay after leaving abruptly the previous day. I told her exactly what happened with Ms. Evans in HR, how she dismissed my concerns, refused to take a formal complaint, and called it trivial. Sarah nodded, didn't seem surprised, and said she suspected that might happen given the relationship between Ms. Evans and Diane. Sarah encouraged me to take it higher up the management chain if HR wouldn't act, and she repeated that she would support me and confirm what she had witnessed if asked. She also mentioned that the company is currently preparing a major bid for a government contract. She said securing it would mean significant expansion and new opportunities, implying it was a crucial time for the company to avoid internal issues, and suggesting I should try to stick around if possible. Armed with my logbook and Sarah's support, I went in to start my shift. As soon as I sat down at my desk, I opened my email. I composed a message to Ms. Evans. I stated clearly that I was formally requesting, again, to file an official complaint regarding ongoing harassment and the creation of a hostile work environment by Diane, Brenda, and Chloe. I briefly listed the types of behavior, comments on food, body shaming, gossip, the staged intervention. I made sure to use phrases like hostile work environment and harassment based on physical appearance. I also mentioned that I had logged numerous specific incidents over the past 6 months and noted that there were potential witnesses to some of the behavior, including Sarah. I CC'd my personal email address on the message. Literally less than a minute after I hit send, Ms. Evans appeared on the work floor, walked straight over to my desk, and asked me to come to her office immediately. Once we were in her office, she asked me what the email was about. I calmly repeated the main points, stating I was formally requesting that a complaint be filed and investigated according to company policy. I asked her what steps she would take now. She sighed, looked annoyed, but said she would file the complaint this time and would speak to my coworkers. Her tone wasn't reassuring. I returned to my desk. A few minutes later, I sent her another brief email asking if she could provide notes from our meeting or confirmation that the complaint process had been initiated. She replied curtly with just, "I'll talk to them later today." Later that afternoon, during a quiet period, Mark, another coworker from a different team who is generally friendly and minds his own business, made an innocent joke about how much milk I put in my tea. Immediately, Diane, sitting nearby, called over loudly, "Oh, careful, Mark, you don't want her reporting you for bullying now." She smirked at Brenda and Chloe. It was quite clear from that comment and her tone that Ms. Evans had likely just had a casual chat with them, possibly downplaying my concerns or framing it as me being overly sensitive, rather than conducting a formal discussion as part of a complaint process. Before leaving work on Tuesday, I decided to take Sarah's advice. Our overall director, Ms. Peterson, usually comes into our office building on Wednesdays. I sent an email to Ms. Peterson's assistant, requesting a brief meeting with the director when she was next in, regarding a sensitive personnel matter. Update 2. Wednesday morning arrived. Shortly after the shift started, Ms. Peterson herself came onto the floor and walked over to my desk. She asked if I was the one who requested a meeting and suggested we talk during my lunch break in her office. At lunchtime, I went up to her office. It's larger than Ms. Evans's, quieter. I laid out the whole story again. The start of the comments 6 months ago, the progression from food to body shaming, the specific examples I had logged, the constant nature of it, the intervention, my unsuccessful attempt to address it with Ms. Evans initially, Ms. Evans' dismissal and refusal to take a complaint, and the email I sent which finally prompted Ms. Evans to agree to file it, followed immediately by Diane's sarcastic comment suggesting they hadn't been spoken to seriously. I made sure to use the terms harassment and hostile environment again. I also mentioned, without going into detail, that I had sought advice on my rights in this situation, implying I might consider external options if the company didn't address it properly. Ms. Peterson listened intently. I couldn't quite read her expression. She didn't seem overly sympathetic to the skinny shaming aspect itself, perhaps sharing some of Ms. Evans's doubt, but she did seem concerned, possibly more about the potential procedural failings of HR and the risk of escalation or legal trouble. She asked a few clarifying questions about dates and HR's response. When I finished, she said she took allegations of harassment and hostile work environments very seriously, regardless of the specific nature, and was particularly concerned about HR's initial handling of the matter. She assured me she would speak with Ms. Evans immediately and ensure the situation was thoroughly investigated and properly resolved according to company policy. She thanked me for bringing it directly to her attention. Thursday morning, I met Sarah outside for our pre-shift cigarette again. She immediately told me what had transpired late Wednesday afternoon, after my shift had finished. I work a 32-hour week while Diane, Brenda, and Chloe work 40 hours, so they were still there. Sarah said she had been called into separate disciplinary meetings for each of the 3 women, conducted by Ms. Evans, but with Ms. Peterson also present for parts of them. Sarah was there as their direct line manager. Sarah relayed the outcomes. Diane and Chloe apparently became quite apologetic once confronted formally, especially with Ms. Peterson involved. They both received formal verbal warnings, which are documented on their HR files. According to Sarah, Diane tried to explain her actions as misguided motherly concern. Chloe reportedly said she just got caught up in the group dynamic. Brenda, however, apparently reacted very differently. Sarah said Brenda became defensive and argumentative during her meeting. Instead of accepting the warning, she tried to turn the blame onto me. She claimed I was deliberately bringing in diet food to make her feel bad, that I was flaunting my body. Sarah clarified Brenda didn't mean literally, but just my general presence, and that I was overly sensitive. Brenda also apparently repeated the argument that thin people can't be bullied about their weight, and that the comments were harmless or even complimentary. Because Brenda had a previous disciplinary issue on file related to her attendance record from last year, her actions in this instance resulted in a formal written warning. Sarah explained the company's progressive discipline policy. The next step for any of them would be a final written warning, and after that, dismissal would be likely. Update 3. Later on Thursday, during another quiet moment on the floor, Diane approached my desk alone. She spoke quietly, apologizing for her behavior. She said she hadn't realized how offensive she was being, repeated the line about just trying to be motherly, and suggested she'd been swept along by the situation, subtly implying Brenda was the main instigator. Given that I had told her directly on multiple occasions that her comments were unwelcome and upsetting, her claim of not realizing seemed questionable. It felt more like she was trying to distance herself from Brenda now that formal warnings had been issued. I just nodded and gave a non-committal response like, "Okay, thank you for the apology." I didn't feel the need to rehash it. Chloe hasn't mentioned the disciplinary meetings or apologized directly. However, her behavior towards me has changed noticeably. She's much quieter around me, more polite in necessary work interactions, and avoids joining in any break room gossip when I'm present. She seems to be keeping her head down. Brenda has not apologized. Since the meetings on Wednesday, she has been overtly cold and avoids eye contact. The direct comments have stopped completely, but the atmosphere around her feels tense. I have noticed her engaging in what feels like passive-aggressive behavior. For example, we often browse news or gossip websites during downtime, as our work is paperless and can have slow periods. Several times now, I've overheard Brenda loudly remarking to Diane or Chloe about pictures of certain celebrities known for being slim. She'd say things like, "Did you see that awful picture of actress X in a bikini? She looks like a skeleton." Or, "Doesn't celebrity Y look ill? Far too thin." She seems to direct these comments towards the other two, possibly trying to get them to agree or to continue criticizing bodies similar to mine indirectly, without technically breaking the terms of her warning by speaking to me or about me directly. Diane and Chloe usually just mumble non-committally or change the subject when she does this. Perhaps I'm reading too much into it, but given the history, it feels intentional. It seems clear that Brenda holds on to her resentment and is likely projecting her own issues. So, the direct harassment has stopped for now, which is the main thing. The situation isn't exactly comfortable, particularly with Brenda, but the intervention from Ms. Peterson and the formal warnings seem to have made a difference in the observable behavior. I'm continuing to keep my personal logbook, noting down dates and details of any further incidents or comments, even the passive-aggressive ones like the celebrity remarks. If things escalate again, or if Brenda's indirect comments become more targeted, I will report it immediately to Sarah and, if necessary, back to Ms. Peterson, referencing the previous warnings. It doesn't feel like a perfectly resolved situation, but it's a significant improvement from where it was. I plan to keep my head down, focus on my work, and continue my job search discreetly, just in case. Thank you again to everyone who offered advice. Now let us move to the next story. Story 2. My GF of 5 years cheated, got pregnant, and tried to pass the baby as mine. I left her, but 6 months later she wants me back in their lives. You won't believe what happened next. I'm Ryan, 28 years old, and I've been with my girlfriend Sarah, 26, for 5 years. We met at a local coffee shop where she worked as a barista. I had just moved to the city for a new job in marketing and was feeling pretty lonely. Sarah's warm smile and easy conversation made me a regular customer before I even realized it. I grew up in a small town with my parents and younger sister. My dad worked in construction and my mom was a teacher. They instilled strong values of honesty and hard work in us from a young age. I was always a bit of an introvert, focusing on my studies and a small group of close friends. Dating wasn't really on my radar until college. Sarah, on the other hand, grew up in the city with her mom and older sister. Her dad left when she was young, which she said made it hard for her to trust people. She was outgoing and popular in school, always surrounded by friends and admirers. She had a few serious relationships before me, but said they all ended because the guys couldn't handle her independent spirit. Our relationship started off casual. We'd grab coffee or dinner after her shifts, talking for hours about our dreams and experiences. I was drawn to her vibrant personality and the way she seemed to light up any room she entered. Sarah said she appreciated my stability and the way I made her feel safe. Things got serious pretty quickly. Within 6 months, we were officially a couple and spending most of our free time together. Sarah introduced me to her friends, who were all artsy and eclectic types. I felt a bit out of place at first with my corporate job and conservative upbringing, but Sarah always made me feel included. We moved in together after about 2 years of dating. It was a big step for both of us. I had some savings from living frugally, and Sarah had just gotten a promotion at the coffee shop to assistant manager. We found a cozy apartment in a trendy neighborhood and spent weeks making it our own. Life was good for a while. We both had steady jobs, shared similar interests in music and food, and genuinely enjoyed each other's company. We talked about marriage and starting a family someday, though we agreed we weren't quite ready yet. Sarah wanted to advance her career first, and I supported her ambitions. About a year ago, Sarah got a new job as a server at an upscale restaurant downtown. A regular customer at the coffee shop owned the place and was impressed by Sarah's people skills. The hours were long and irregular, often late into the night, but the pay was much better than her previous job. I was supportive of her career change, even though it meant we'd have less time together. At first, Sarah was excited about the new opportunity. She'd come home full of stories about the interesting people she met and the fancy food and drinks she was learning about. She started dressing differently too, wearing more makeup and stylish clothes that fit the upscale atmosphere of the restaurant. Over time, though, I started noticing some changes in Sarah's behavior. She became more distant and irritable. Our conversations grew shorter and less frequent. She often came home late smelling of alcohol, claiming she was out with coworkers after her shift. I tried to be understanding, knowing how stressful her new job could be. I suggested we plan a weekend getaway to reconnect, but Sarah always had an excuse for why she couldn't take time off. When I brought up my concerns about us drifting apart, she accused me of being needy and not supporting her career. It hurt, but I backed off, not wanting to push her away further. Things really started to unravel about 2 months ago. Sarah began buying expensive designer clothes and accessories that I knew we couldn't afford on our salaries. When I asked about it, she said they were gifts from wealthy regular customers at the restaurant. It didn't sit right with me, but I wanted to trust her. One night, Sarah came home particularly late, around 3 a.m. When I asked where she'd been, she snapped at me, saying she didn't need to report her every move. We had a big fight that night. Sarah accused me of trying to control her and said I was holding her back. I was shocked by the venom in her words and went to sleep on the couch. The next morning, Sarah apologized and blamed her outburst on work stress. She promised to make more time for us and suggested we plan that weekend trip we'd talked about. I wanted to believe her, so I pushed my doubts aside. A week later, I was doing laundry when I found a matchbook from a high-end hotel in Sarah's jacket pocket. When I casually mentioned it, Sarah got defensive and said a coworker must have put it there. Her reaction made me suspicious, but I didn't want to accuse her of anything without proof. Last week, I accidentally saw some text messages on Sarah's phone while it was charging. She had left it on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower, and a notification popped up. The messages were from a man named Jake, and the content made it clear they were more than just friends. There were references to gifts he had bought her and plans to meet up. My heart sank as I realized Sarah had been lying to me for months. I spent the next day in a daze, trying to figure out what to do. That night, I confronted Sarah about the messages. At first, she tried to deny everything, claiming Jake was just a friend from work. But as I pressed her with details from the texts, she eventually broke down and admitted to having an affair with Jake for the past 4 months. Sarah swore it was just physical, and that she still loved me. She said Jake was a wealthy regular at the restaurant who had pursued her relentlessly. She claimed she got caught up in the excitement and attention, but that it didn't mean anything. She begged me not to leave her, promising to end things with Jake immediately. I was devastated and didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to end things immediately, but after 5 years together, it wasn't an easy decision. I thought about all we had been through together, the life we had built, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that the Sarah I loved wouldn't have done this to me. I told Sarah I needed some time to think and went to stay with a friend for a few days. My friend Mark had known me since college and had seen me through some tough times. He let me crash on his couch and listened as I poured out the whole story. Mark pointed out some red flags in Sarah's behavior that I had overlooked. He reminded me of times Sarah had been flaky or inconsistent, how she often twisted situations to make herself the victim. It was hard to hear, but I knew he had a point. Yesterday, Sarah called me in tears saying we needed to talk urgently. When I went back to our apartment, she dropped a bombshell. She's pregnant. At first, I was shocked, then cautiously hopeful that maybe this could be a new beginning for us. But then Sarah revealed that Jake is actually the father, not me. I'm completely crushed and feel like my whole world is crumbling. Sarah claims she wants to work things out and raise the baby together, saying Jake wants nothing to do with it. But I don't know how I can ever trust her again after all the lies and manipulation. Sarah says she's about 10 weeks along, which means she got pregnant right around the time I confronted her about the affair. She swears she didn't know then, and that she would have told me sooner if she had. But given everything else she's lied about, I don't know what to believe anymore. I'm torn between my love for Sarah and the anger, betrayal I feel. Part of me wants to just walk away from this mess, but another part still cares for her and hates the thought of her struggling as a single mother. I know I'm not responsible for the child, but I can't help feeling conflicted. My parents raised me to believe in commitment and working through problems. They've been married for 35 years and have weathered some tough times together. I always thought Sarah and I would have that kind of lasting love. Now I'm questioning everything I thought I knew about our relationship. I'm lost and don't know what to do. Any advice on how to handle this situation would be greatly appreciated. Should I try to work things out with Sarah? Or is it time to cut my losses and move on? I'm struggling to think clearly through all the emotions. Update 1. It's been about a month since my last post and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their advice and support. It really helped me gain some clarity during a very difficult time. After careful consideration, I decided I couldn't continue a relationship with Sarah. The trust was completely shattered, and I realized I deserved better than to be manipulated and lied to. It wasn't an easy decision to make. I spent countless sleepless nights going over every detail of our relationship, trying to pinpoint where things went wrong. I remembered how supportive Sarah had been when I lost my job 2 years ago. She picked up extra shifts at the coffee shop to help cover our expenses and never once complained. She was there for me when my grandmother passed away last year, holding me as I cried and helping me write the eulogy. These memories made it even harder to reconcile with the person she had become. When I told Sarah my decision, she became extremely emotional and tried to guilt me into staying. She said I was abandoning her and the baby and that she couldn't do it alone. She brought up all the good times we had shared and promised she could change. It was heart-wrenching to see her so upset, but I stood firm and told her that her choices led to this situation, not mine. Sarah's reaction quickly turned from sadness to anger. She accused me of never really loving her and said I was using this as an excuse to leave. She brought up old arguments and mistakes I had made, twisting them to make me look like the bad guy. It was a side of her I had never seen before, and it reinforced that I was making the right decision. I moved out of our shared apartment about 3 weeks ago. It was hard leaving the place we had called home for years. Every corner held a memory. The kitchen where we had cooked countless meals together, the living room where we had movie marathons on rainy weekends, the bedroom where we had shared our hopes and dreams. But I knew it was necessary for my mental health. I'm currently staying with my brother until I can find a new place of my own. He's been incredibly supportive, giving me space when I need it, but also making sure I don't isolate myself completely. We've been spending more time together than we have in years, and it's been nice to reconnect. Sarah has been constantly trying to contact me since I left. At first, it was more emotional pleas and guilt trips. When that didn't work, she switched to anger, calling me selfish and immature for running away from my responsibilities. She even reached out to my family, trying to get them to convince me to come back. Thankfully, they've respected my decision and haven't pressured me. I've been ignoring most of Sarah's messages, only responding when absolutely necessary about practical matters like separating our belongings and finances. It's been difficult to maintain this boundary, especially when she sends late-night messages saying she misses me. But I know engaging further will only prolong the pain for both of us. Last week, I ran into Jake at a local bar. I wasn't sure if he knew who I was, but he approached me and tried to apologize for his role in the affair. He claimed he had no idea Sarah was in a serious relationship when they got involved. While I appreciate him owning up to his actions, I told him I wasn't interested in discussing it further. Jake did reveal some information that shocked me, though. Apparently, Sarah had told him she was single when they first met. She played the same manipulation games with him, lying about her situation and using him for expensive gifts and nights out. Jake only recently found out about me and the full extent of Sarah's deception. This new information made me realize just how deep Sarah's web of lies went. It wasn't just a momentary lapse in judgment or a single mistake. She had been systematically deceiving both of us for months. It reinforced that I made the right decision in ending things, but it also made me question how well I ever really knew Sarah. I'm still struggling with conflicting emotions about the baby. Even though I know it's not my child, I can't help feeling a sense of attachment after believing it was mine for a short time. I had started to imagine a future as a father, teaching the kid to ride a bike, helping with homework, watching them grow up. Letting go of those dreams has been harder than I expected. I've decided to distance myself from the situation entirely for now. Sarah's pregnancy and the child are not my responsibility, and I need to focus on healing and moving forward with my own life. It feels selfish sometimes, but I know it's what's best for everyone involved in the long run. My friends and family have been incredibly supportive through all of this. They've helped me see that I'm not at fault for Sarah's actions, and that prioritizing my own well-being isn't selfish. My best friend from college even flew in for a weekend to keep me company and take my mind off things. I'm working on rebuilding my self-esteem and learning to trust again, but I know it will take time. I've started journaling to process my thoughts and emotions. It's been helpful to get everything out on paper and look back to see how far I've come. For now, I'm taking things one day at a time. I'm throwing myself into work and picking up old hobbies I had neglected during my relationship with Sarah. I've started playing guitar again and joined a local recreational soccer league. It's not always easy, but I'm slowly starting to feel like myself again. I know there will be more challenges ahead, especially as Sarah's pregnancy progresses and the baby is born, but I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. This experience has taught me a lot about myself and what I want in a relationship. While I'm not ready to date again yet, I hope that when I am, I'll be able to build something healthier and more honest. Update 2. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some developments in my situation. I've officially moved into my own apartment now. It's smaller than the place I shared with Sarah, but it feels good to have a space that's truly my own. I've been slowly furnishing it and making it feel like home. My brother and friends have been a huge help with the move and getting settled. Last weekend, we had a small housewarming party. It was the first time in months that I felt genuinely happy and relaxed. Sarah's attempts to contact me have finally slowed down. I think she's realized that I'm serious about maintaining distance. From what I've heard through mutual friends, she's about 6 months pregnant now and struggling financially. Apparently, Jake is providing some financial support, but he's not interested in being involved beyond that. Part of me feels bad for her situation, but I remind myself that these are the consequences of her own actions. I ran into Sarah's sister, Emily, at the grocery store last week. It was awkward at first, but we ended up talking for a while. Emily apologized for her sister's behavior and said that the family is disappointed in Sarah's choices. She also revealed that this isn't the first time Sarah has done something like this. Apparently, she had a pattern of lying and manipulating partners in her past relationships too. Emily shared a story from when Sarah was in college. She had been dating 2 guys simultaneously, telling each of them that they were exclusive. When the truth came out, Sarah managed to convince both guys that the other was lying and manipulating her. It ended with the 2 guys fighting each other while Sarah played the victim. Emily said their mom had always enabled Sarah's behavior, making excuses for her and bailing her out of tough situations. This information was both enlightening and disheartening. On one hand, it helped me see that Sarah's behavior wasn't my fault. It's a deep-seated issue she's had for years. On the other hand, it made me question everything about our relationship. Were any of her feelings for me genuine? How much of what I thought I knew about her was actually true? I've started seeing a counselor to work through these feelings and the trauma from the relationship. It's been helpful to have a neutral party to talk to and gain perspective. We've been exploring why I was attracted to Sarah in the first place and how I can set better boundaries in future relationships. I'm learning to recognize red flags and trust my instincts more. Work has been a good distraction. I recently got a promotion that I've been working towards for a while. It involves more responsibility and some travel, which I'm looking forward to. My boss has been understanding about my personal situation and has given me some flexibility as I adjust to my new role. I've also reconnected with some old friends I had drifted apart from during my relationship with Sarah. It's been great to rebuild those connections and remember who I was before all of this happened. Last month, I went on a camping trip with some college buddies. Being out in nature, away from cell service and the stresses of daily life, was incredibly refreshing. While I'm doing better overall, I still have moments of sadness and anger about the situation. Sometimes I'll hear a song or see something that reminds me of Sarah, and it hits me all over again. The due date for the baby is coming up in a few months, and I know that will be a difficult time emotionally, but I'm taking it one day at a time and focusing on building a life I'm proud of. Update 3. It's been about 6 months since my last update. Life has settled into a new normal, and I'm in a much better place emotionally and mentally. The biggest news is that Sarah gave birth to her baby boy about a month ago. I found out through social media. She posted a vague announcement without mentioning the father. Update 3. Continued. It brought up some complicated feelings, but I'm glad I wasn't directly involved in the situation. Seeing the baby's photo stirred up emotions I thought I had dealt with. For a moment, I imagined what it would have been like if things had turned out differently. But I quickly reminded myself of the reality of the situation and why I made the choices I did. I've maintained my distance from Sarah, but I did send a brief congratulatory message when I heard about the birth. It felt like the right thing to do, given our history. She responded with a thank you and an invitation to meet the baby, which I politely declined. I made it clear that while I wish her and the child well, I'm not interested in being part of their lives. Sarah seemed to understand and didn't push the issue further. My counseling sessions have been incredibly helpful in processing everything that happened with Sarah. I've gained a lot of insight into my own patterns and behaviors in relationships. One thing I've realized is that I tend to ignore red flags when I'm emotionally invested in someone. I'm working on being more objective and not letting my feelings cloud my judgment. On a more positive note, I've started dating again. I met a woman named Olivia through a mutual friend, and we've been seeing each other for about 2 months now. It's been refreshing to be with someone who is honest and straightforward. I was upfront with Olivia about my past experiences, and she's been understanding and patient as I navigate this new relationship. Olivia and I are taking things slow, which feels right after everything I've been through. We enjoy hiking together on weekends and trying out new restaurants in the city. It's nice to have someone to share experiences with again, without the pressure or baggage of my previous relationship. Work continues to go well. I'm enjoying my new role and the challenges it brings. The travel has been a nice change of pace, allowing me to see new places and meet interesting people. I've even started considering a transfer to our company's office in another city. The idea of a fresh start in a new place is appealing, though I haven't made any decisions yet. I've also picked up a new hobby. I joined a local hiking group and have been exploring some beautiful trails in our area. It's been great for both my physical and mental health. Being out in nature helps clear my head and gives me perspective when I'm feeling overwhelmed. My relationship with my family has grown stronger through all of this. I've been making an effort to visit my parents more often and call my sister regularly. They've been a constant source of support, and it's made me appreciate them even more. While the situation with Sarah will always be a part of my past, it no longer defines me or controls my life. I've learned a lot about myself and what I want in a relationship. I'm more confident in my ability to set boundaries and stand up for myself. There are still moments when I wonder about Sarah and the baby, but they're becoming less frequent. I hope she's doing well, and that she's able to provide a good life for her child. But I'm also glad that I made the decision to prioritize my own well-being. As I look to the future, I'm feeling cautiously optimistic. I know there will be more challenges ahead, but I feel better equipped to handle them now. I'm focusing on building a life that makes me happy and surrounding myself with honest, supportive people. For now, I'm taking each day as it comes and trying to stay open to new experiences and opportunities. Life may not have turned out the way I expected, but I'm learning that sometimes the unexpected paths can lead to better destinations.